We are Legion. We are one. We are Altharius.
Of all the mighty forces the Imperium commanded during the Great Crusade, there were none so wound about with falsehood, superstition, and paradox as the 20th Legion. Any study of the 20th is fraught with difficulty, contradiction, and deliberate misdirection, and uncovering truth when applied to such a study is a vain hope. The 20th Legion was a highly independent weapon that neither the Emperor nor later the War Master could fully control. It was a twisting serpentine thing of formless shadows, as dangerous and venomous as the multi-headed monster of ancient myth that in latter days became its sigil. As a force dedicated to the arts of guile, subterfuge, infiltration, and counterintelligence, the Legion's covert efforts were intended to sow dismay and dismantle a foe's resolve and defenses piecemeal before landing an overwhelming killing blow, utilizing every one of the myriad weapons and war machines granted to the Legiones Astartes. Although in many cases these protracted and complex operations were the means and ends also, for the Legion was both unpredictable and it delighted in causing strife. The 20th Legion was established largely in separation from the rest of the Legiones Astartes, and it is generally thought created to a very specific end and purpose. However, what these purposes were remains a mystery. Its gene seed strain was kept in secrecy, though it is known to have had a highly successful implantation rate and to be free of flaw. The Legion is also thought not to have expanded beyond a very small contingent of between 1,000 and 2,000 warriors for many of its early years, never having been granted a regional intake on Terra. However, later claims suggest the 20th multiplied in secret and may in fact have been the largest of all the legions. These first mysteries would spawn others, and questions would continue to go unanswered, not only about the 20th Legions and nature, but about the use to which it was put in its earliest days. Before it acted as a united legion, the 20th may have been operating in the shadows of the Imperium for more than a century, building a web of influence unlike any other Space Marine Legion, and undertaking a secret war which ran parallel to the Great Crusade itself. There are no clear facts pertaining to the 20th Legion's covert activities during the unification of the Sol System, but they can be extrapolated from records of unknown Legiones Astartes units carrying out targeted strikes, abductions, and assassinations. There are reports of Space Marines who answered to no known master or legion passing through war zones on high-priority missions under the writ of unassailable clearance codes. These legionaries bore a range of colors and styles of heraldry with little to no uniformity, sometimes even mimicking the livery of other legions. It is impossible to ascertain whether they were intended to simply confound allies and enemies alike, or if they served a martial purpose known only to the Legion itself. The Imperialis Logistica could not confirm even the most basic details of the Legion, be it the Legion's primary spheres of recruitment, or even gauge its operating strength. It was a legion seemingly sprung whole and entire as if from nowhere, complete with tens of thousands of fully equipped legionaries and a capable war fleet that operated with veteran skill. Only their Primarch Altharius knew the true extent of his legion, its strength and its reach, and perhaps even he knew it only imperfectly. The Alpha Legion's companies, battalions, and chapters, referred to as harrows, cohorts, or instruments in shifting meanings, were formulated and broken down, seemingly at the whim of the Legion's commanders, the chain of command appearing fluid and highly decentralized. A Harrow Master, a master strategist, would hold ultimate command of a war zone, but specialists such as siege masters or vigilators were deferred to in their fields of expertise. Under these, each unit was expected to operate as a self-motivated and self-governing cell without need of exterior command, and expected to display initiative and pursue its part in the wider battle plan under its own cognizance and in any way it judged to be expedient. Each warrior of the Legion was trained to excel in battlefield and strategic awareness. In battle, the Alpha Legion became renowned for its discipline and impenetrable organization, which emphasized the unity of the Legion and cooperation between its legionaries in every respect. It maintained a wide spectrum of military assets and capacities, and was dedicated to flexibility and capability in every type of war zone. The Legion was known to pride itself on its unbreakable unity of purpose and will, even though Alfarius encouraged his commanders to operate with extreme independence. The Alpha Legion made extensive use of human agents and paramilitaries, building close ties with many such organizations. However, it kept its distance from its fellow legions. Rumors followed that the Alpha Legion fought alongside each of its brothers in turn, that it might insert its own operatives into their ranks, though such hearsay is impossible to substantiate. The Legion's hallmark was a relentless application of force and a terrifying level of coordination between its warriors and war machines. This capacity for combined arms warfare and speed of attack was matched by the Legion's mastery of the darker arts of war. Sabotage and ambush, terror tactics, and assassination. Also evident was its desire for secrecy and talent for misdirection. To its enemies, the Legion was a true nightmare, a foe that could strike from any direction, that seemed to thwart any stratagem and strike at weakness no matter how well hidden. The Legion was a foe that knew neither mercy nor honor nor quarter, and one that seemed to delight in destruction for its own sake. Allegedly the youngest Legion, the 20th was zealous to prove itself against its brothers at any cost, and the often over-elaborate and needlessly complex and malign way in which the Alpha Legion chose to wage war frequently earned it acrimony rather than fame. The Harrowing was the name given to the Legion's most infamous stratagem, by which it wielded a devastating mixture of subtlety and overwhelming force, reveling in both meticulous planning and the exercising of imaginative cruelty in war. Beginning with infiltration and sabotage, the Alpha Legion spread confusion and panic unseen, maiming and bleeding its foes' main strength and forcing upon them such vulnerability as the Alpha Legion wished. Then would come the kill itself. Often this final attack, the Harrowing itself, would be in the form of an assault from 100 different directions at once. A blizzard of different tactics and attack plans used against a foe either utterly unaware of the true danger or already brought to the brink of chaos. The result was almost inevitable catastrophe for the Alpha Legion's victims, as the full might of the Legion, comprised of elite Lernaean Terminators, would then descend at the point of the enemy's greatest weakness, and what would follow would be much more akin to murder than battle. Of the many mysteries that surround the 20th Legion, the most fundamental and key enigma is the question of its Primarch. Multiple conflicting reports speak of Alfarius' rediscovery, from the Emperor rescuing him from Xenos enslavement, those claiming he boarded Horus's flagship in a calculated raid only to meet his kin by chance, to those daring to suggest he was not scattered as his brothers were, but grew to maturity on Terra alongside the Emperor. All such accounts are lies. It is widely believed that on diverse occasions members of his legion each claimed not only Alfarius' name, but also his identity. even in council with allied legions and emissaries of the imperial court. Some have even made the outlandish claim that there was more than one Primarch of the Alpha Legion, or that Alfarius was even somehow able to duplicate himself physically and appear to be in more than one location simultaneously. Some have even attributed metaphor hidden in plain sight to the emblem of the three-headed Hydra that later came to symbolize the Legion in this regard, furthering this mystery and outright deception perpetuated by Alfarius. Many such reliable reports of the Primarch's physical appearance differ. While he is noted on many occasions to be of similar stature and countenance of any of his legionaries, and able to pass unnoticed in their ranks, other records show him as a towering and fearful figure, bedecked in sinisterly ornate Hydra-chased battleplate. Whatever the cause, contemporary accounts record Alfarius as being the last Primarch to rejoin his legion, and describe him as a masterful tactician and strategist. His erudition was astounding, and his great intelligence was as cool and watchful as a viper's gaze.
Alfarius shall remember this.
Welcome back to Terra, where today we're going to talk about the Primarch that was raised on Terra, allegedly, if you would believe such rumours. We're going to talk about the Alpha Legion, and I am joined by... Oh, hang on, let's move you a bit more centred. There you go, that's professional. I'm joined by Josh Omegon Edge, who is, I mean, basically the king of Alpha Legion, as far as I'm aware. Like, very few are as big a fans of the faction as you are, mate.
No, mate, I love Alpha Legion. Thank you for introducing me like that. How's it going, guys? Yes. Alpha Legion are my jam. They have been since I got back into the hobby, probably over 7 years ago now. So absolutely love them. Love everything about them. I'm just happy to be here.
Yes, I'm going to forget if I don't do this, so I'm going to do it now, because you're also like a pretty phenomenal painter. I think I have some pictures. Alpha Legion boys right here. Yeah, do you want to give a little bit of a background on your 40K? This artwork is literally one of your models, so you're pretty well entrenched in the faction.
So I guess when I got back into the hobby about 7 years ago, like pre-COVID, I wanted to paint a Legion that wasn't loyal to the Emperor fully, based on what I knew, but then also wasn't like a super traitor, so didn't use things like demons or anything like that. And initially I had looked into Thousand Suns, and then found out in 40K they all got turned into dust, and I was like, oh, that sucks. So then I went with Alpha Legion. I know, right? Araman just dropped the ball totally. But then I found out about Alpha Legion. And I think one of the things that excited me was their scheme. I love the kind of blue shimmering scheme they had. Yes. And I just started reading about them, and they were this kind of spec ops infiltrating Legion that played completely different to the majority of the others, even more so than the Raven Guard, who are much more about stealth. Alpha Legion are much more about infiltration. So not about sneaking or staying out of sight, but actually hiding in plain sight. So actually changing their behavior to fit the opponents that they were dealing with. So I love that. So I started painting the scheme, and I'll be open, super ADHD here, but it allows me to hyper focus into a certain aspect, and I just kind of took it even further, kind of building my own kind of background and fluff around them. One aspect I really fell in love with was the difference between the fact that they had two Primarchs, so they had Omegon and they had Alfarius. And there's always this kind of back and forth about who's the good Primarch and who's the kind of baddie.
Oh, we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it today.
So I kind of built up based on what I was reading through the fluff, I kind of built up my own background around that, and built what we call these black armored Alpha Legion, which became took the idea of the Efrit, and that's what it kind of turned into. So I started just like building armies to the point that first image you shared, Games Workshop, he invited me down to launch Heresy 2.0, and they asked me to paint Alfarius. So that's what that model's from. So I became the official. I say the official. I like to call it official, but I they kind of saw me as like a really big fan for the Alpha Legion. and they
Yeah.
gave me the honor of representing them. So yeah, and since then it's just been crazy. Just kind of kept going with it, really enjoy it, and since then I kind of branched out into other areas of painting. But I absolutely love the Alpha
Yeah.
Legion.
And you do like you have your own Instagram and Patreon where you teach people how to paint as well, I should say.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the description later. But Omega Edge on Google will pull up your stuff if people are interested and they want to learn how to use oil paints and use all these incredible techniques that you use. So yeah, definitely, I'll definitely shout that out. So my dream stream here today would be you explaining to me how like everything I think about the Alpha Legion is wrong. Yeah, I'd love to walk away with that mentality. And I mean, straight away, you know, when I was playing that intro lore there, like my editor used a couple of the pieces of artwork that you're not a massive fan of, and I thought that was really interesting. So do you want to just explain what is really the problem with this like classic artwork that we all know and love, where you have an Alpha Legionnaire and there's normally some lightning going from balls to brain metaphorically, and then on the other half they're phasing into a Dark Angel or an Imperial Fist, or I think it's a Lamenter in that one. What is really the problem with that artwork in your eyes?
I mean, okay, so like disclaimer, Sexus, I absolutely love. We're good friends, and
the
no
artist,
issue with
he's incredible. Yeah,
like a really good friend of mine. And we always talk about it and joke and talk about the shifting Alpha Legion. But I think the issue I have with it is that I've never felt that it kind of it's not backed up in the fluff, but also more importantly, it doesn't really explain or show or fit who the Alpha Legion are. So the Alpha Legion are a legion about the long game. So everything about them is about infiltration and taking the long route around things. Like everything is very meticulous and requires a lot of planning and foresight. To the part in one of the books, Praetorian of Dawn, the Alpha Legion, if anyone's read it, the Alpha Legion appear in a campaign that was led by the Imperial Fists. And one of the ways during the kind of subjugation of a planet, the Alpha Legion actually execute the leader's family, and they do it all at the same time. And this is because they actually implanted people in the families and the friends and someone close to the people who were defeated years in advance.
Yeah.
So they had already set up the battlefields to win by the time the Imperial Fists arrive. And that took many, many, many years of planning, right? So for then kind of, I feel like it's kind of dumbed down to compare that, years of planning, things having to work, everything having to work out perfectly, to pressing a button and then your appearance switching to, oh, I'm a Blood Angel and now I'm an Alpha Legionnaire, haha. Like that whole idea for me is just not who the Alpha Legion are. And I know that kind of sounds maybe a bit like arrogant or because, there's also the quote from Alpharius where he says, the day we stay the same, the Legion stays the same as the day it dies. So there is leeway for them changing, but that's something that wouldn't change. I know that's something that is kind of key to their character because they want to do everything on hard mode. They want to do everything really difficultly and challenge and expect the challenge. So yeah,
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, say what you will about this channel, right? Like I'm a big Dark Angels fan, and I will spin every piece of lore to their benefit and how I see them. But in my defense, I genuinely do allow for other people to do the same. So if you have your vision of the Alpha Legion, I think that that's valid. And like, of course, it goes without saying, read the lore for yourselves and then develop your own truth. But I will warn you before reading Alpha Legion lore, be careful not to drive yourselves mad. Alpha Legion lore is like, I'm trying to get to the bottom of their true motivations will drive you mad, because there are so many things that they do that really make no difference. I would say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, I would say that the wording that they use in the heresy that I like the most to at least describe their motivations throughout the heresy is they're about keeping the scale balanced, and this is what Omegon talks about. So, for example, in the story Deliverance Lost, we have the Alpha Legion. They sabotage the Raven Guard responsible for this calamity that befalls Corvus Corax after the initial calamity that's already befell his legion, and then he goes to give this information to Horus, this genetic information of the Primarchs to Horus, to Fabius Bio to work on, but then it turns out that that information has been corrupted, and Omegon says, like, you know, thank God, thank God, because that would have tipped the scale too much towards the traitors. So they have a really delicate act, and so their decisions throughout the heresy are all over the place because they're just trying to keep things exactly as is. Do you know what I mean?
Well, so a correction there. That's during Deliverance. Oh, there we go. I'm such a nerd. I'm so glad. So in that book, they do get the sample, right? So Omegon has the sample of the perfect gene seed, and they give a corrupted version to Horus. And that's way to Fabius Bile, but they've kept that sample for themselves because they want to be the strongest legion, but at the end of all of it. So it kind of sets it up. They don't actually follow the thread any further. Maybe they will going forwards, but it kind of sets up that the Alpha Legion actually have really strong Marines that aren't Primaris Marines that they're going to be maybe bringing into 40k. But they've kept it for themselves because they're constantly working against. They're trying to play both sides, and I think it's like super interesting, man. Sorry for my little actually moment.
No, it's absolutely right. I mean, so as a big Alpha Legion fan, I've got to ask, what are your thoughts on the Cabal? I'll give a short summary for people who are maybe kind of new to the Alpha Legion. So in the story Legion by Dan Abnett, we're introduced to this concept called the Cabal, and the Cabal are one of the more controversial parts of the heresy. And in that story, the Alpha Legion discover this Cabal of Xenos all working together, and they try to bring the Alpha Legion to their side. They originally tried to bring the Emperor's Children, and then they bring the Alpha Legion, and they're basically presented with a few options. If they're told that Horus is going to betray the Emperor, and if the Emperor wins, then the Imperium will stagnate and decay over 10 or even like longer than that, thousands of years, and eventually chaos will consume the galaxy. But if Horus wins, Horus will be consumed by the self-loathing and shame for the actions he's taken, and in his fury, he will ultimately turn on chaos. He will exterminate the human species within generations, and this sacrifice of humanity would ultimately kind of starve the Chaos Gods, extinguishing them from the galaxy. And I did grab Alfarius' quote at the end of this, where he says, "I stand for the Emperor. The overthrow of the Primordial Annihilator is his greatest wish. So what I do, Autarch, from this moment on, I will do for the Emperor." And throughout the heresy and in the Drop Site Massacre book, whenever the Alpha Legion is sort of playing both sides, they do drop this line, "for the Emperor." We do keep seeing that come up. Interesting start. What's weird for me, always felt a bit weird, is they then kind of turn against the Cabal pretty quickly and betray them, almost immediately the next time we see them. So how do you feel about the Cabal storyline? Yeah, now that it's, I guess, the heresy's over, are you very satisfied with it?
I think it's actually very interesting because it sets up a lot of different threads. So they only gave them the two ideas, right? The two futures. And, with more of these things, you got to take the stuff with a pinch of salt. The Alpha Legion are always going to kind of think of their own way to solve things. That's in the nature. I think the Primarchs are kind of slaves to their nature in that regard. So they can't help but think of an alternative route. And the third path is that Omegon and Alfarius, they help the Emperor, but by rather than actually stopping him from getting fully ill or kind of destroyed or interred or defeated, instead they defeat Horus, but they've actually kept the Imperium going and kept it alive. But what that leads to is some of the Legion actually rebel. So you've got the two sides. And what is the book called? I think it's called Seventh Serpent. And we see some loyalist Alpha Legion right, that are trying to return to Terra. And when the Shattered Legion, so Medusan and Sharakin and those guys, they're tricked. Actually, Medusan is obviously dead by this point, and Alpharis is wearing his face and tricks the Shattered Legion survivors into killing the loyal or defeating the loyal Alpha Legion. But the captain at the time, who finds out that one of these Iron Hands, Medusan Iron Hands, is an Alpha Legionnaire, he says to him, you're one of his. Meaning, right, that he knows that there are factions within the Alpha Legion under Alpharius who are loyal or traitorous or not behaving in a way that is loyal to the Imperium. And that's what results in a fight between the two factions. So you've got these two Alpha Legionnaires fighting each other. So that kind of puts in the idea that there were some Legionnaires who just wanted to stay loyal to the Emperor, and some Legionnaires who joined actually join the Primarchs or Alpharius to be traitor, to kind of go against it all. The question is, like, are the Alpha Legion loyal? Is so tricky because there's so many layers towards it, and the Cabal are one of the layers that sets the Alpha Legion on their path. And I found them interesting to a point, but I always had the expectation that the Alpha Legion would turn against them eventually. And I like the idea because we do see some point of it, right? I do believe that it had Horus won, he probably would have wiped out all the other legions, because there was no way they were going to work together. What's Angon supposed to do when there's no one left to fight? Well, they're all just going to start fighting each other. I mean, Fulgrim just flees the siege at one point.
Yeah.
So I kind of expected that, right? I think the Cabal just wanted to wipe out humanity, really. They didn't want humanity to be around. And Alpharis and Omegon, based on their main book, if you remember, if you read the Primarch book, where it talks about Alpharius growing up with the Emperor, doing what he thinks the Emperor would have wanted, there was been no way for him to fully betray him. So I think the Alpha Legion are loyal. I think Alpharius and Omegon are loyal.
Special guys.
I think they are still. I think they are still loyal to the Imperium. But the Primarchs have differing ways of how they meet that criteria. And that's where they kind of go on odds. That's how they kind of butt heads. There's never really open warfare between them.
Yes. Yeah, there is a little bit of that. And even the Alpharius' Primarch novel, Alpharius Head of the Hydra by Mike Brooks, does kind of suggest maybe there is some difference between the two. But I remember you and I talking about this before at a party, if I remember correctly. One of the really interesting things about Alpharius Omegon that I think is so like kind of subtle in Praetorian of Dawn, when Alpharius is killed by Dawn, he kind of explodes. The book describes it as like the wording is like he sort of explodes, and then the POV switches to Omegon, and Omegon, there's a flash of light, and Omegon wakes up, and he says, "I am alone." I've always sort of assumed that means it's something along the lines of their souls, because they are described as one soul in two bodies. They're not just twins, and that's why the question of who knows that there's Alpharius Omegon is a really interesting question. They're kind of still just one person, but at the end of the heresy, I think they're just one. That's how I've always taken it. But I don't know what your thoughts are there. Yeah.
So this is something we actually see in other books. When Fulgrim defeats Manus, there's a detonation of light. So when a Primarch dies, there's always a detonation of light. So that's how we know that when people say, did Dawn kill a Primarch? Yes, that's one way we can determine.
Superb point. Yeah.
The second part is Omegon and Alpharius have always known of each other's existence. And that's kind of like solidified in Mike Brooks's Head of the Hydra. When Alpharius dies, yes, Omegon acknowledges, he's like, I'm alone, because he knows. And if you remember, first he can taste blood in his mouth, and we know that because that's exactly, Dawn cuts his head in two. And then he feels pain on his wrists, as if he was grabbing something. So when Alpharius is killed, his soul is sent back to his body with Omegon, but he hasn't taken any of the mental knowledge. He just knows that he's alone now. He's taken all the kind of memories are gone. He wakes up and he's never slept. So this is all to kind of tell you, John French is doing this to tell you that yes, Alpharius has died. This is now the link onto Omegon being alone. The next part of this is during the Slaves to Darkness, I like to call it Salads to Darkness, is when the Alpha Legionnaire appears in front of Horus, right? And they're all having that meeting, and he breaks the dagger and shatters the dagger. And what that's meant to represent is the Legion is now broken, and they're not gonna join in as a whole in the full siege. Instead, they'll send their troops to kind of do the jobs they'd originally given them, but they're not actually going to commit because, again, Omegon never really wanted to turn against the Imperium itself. So everything he's been doing has been to not turn against the Imperium, has been to kind of equalize the playing field.
That also sort of tells me that even though Alpharius and Omegon clearly do have different points of view and there's a conflict within, that means that once they're together, they stick to Omegon's point of view. So clearly they, as a whole, they feel more strongly about loyalty to the Emperor. And it is quite interesting that, like, in the siege, there is a little bit, outside of the Ingopek stuff, which we'll talk about later, there is a little bit of a Alpha Legion storyline, but they're not particularly prominent in the siege. And I thought they would be. I thought that would be their time to shine. Really, it's Praetorian of Dawn is their sort of, you know, that is their big attack against the homeworld. And it's, like it's a big deal. Like,
there's a whole thread there. So the parallels that Mike takes from John's books are really interesting. So Mike Brooks, who wrote Head of the Hydra, and I have to go a long way around. Okay, so the idea that if we are to believe that Primarch book, Alpharius is the first Primarch to be found and spends majority of his time with the Emperor, and then the rest of his time with Malcador, the Sigillite, who's the Emperor's advisor. During this time, Malcador gives Alpharius several tests. Do you remember in the book when he has to infiltrate the Royal Palace? And
the first Blood Games is right, incredible scene.
So
incredible.
That whole sequence is within Alpharius's nature to test the defenses. And this is really important because I will draw a parallel to Praetorian of Dawn, because what Alpharius is doing is trying to show the weaknesses in the defense. So he kills the custody. He
which
fights,
is a shock.
You know, only a Primarch can kill a Primarch. So no one else can kill a Primarch.
That's what they say. Yeah.
That's what they say. Even if we take into account, I don't know. Curse. Well, is he dead?
I
think they've actually changed that now, because now he dies at the screen. They added that note, didn't they? So maybe that.
I don't think they're gonna. I think that you'd have to because I mean who wrote that book? It's something Stevenson or something. It's a long. I can't remember the name of the author, but with Sahal's story, it's. He doesn't write anymore for Black Library, so I don't know if they'll revisit that, but I'd love to be wrong.
Maybe they'll change it. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm hoping for the continuity's sake, but he might be. But anyway, I digress. So the whole point of Alpharius, he fights Valdor, and then he successfully could blow up the ship if he wanted to, right? And all of that is to show you Alpharius's nature. He's not very trusting. He doesn't trust any of the other Primarchs because it's really his nature to be distrusting, even though he himself is a snake, a deceptive Primarch, So the whole idea of him doing that, though, is for the benefit of the Imperium, right? So hopefully you guys are following me. Now, if we go to Praetorian of Dawn, are shown a parallel again, where Alpharius isn't just simply attacking Pluto or attacking Terra. He's testing the defenses, right? He's testing the defenses of the Imperial Palace to prepare Dawn for the battle which is to come.
Oh, sure. So when he faces Dawn, he says, "I'm not here to kill you.
Yeah, I'm not here to kill you, bro.
I'm here to ensure Horus's defeat," is what he says. Whether that's you can read that as a ploy or whatever, but that he seems pretty adamant.
Right.
He repeats it. He's not just one time.
He's not trying to kill Dawn, right? Yeah. And there's another parallel here. Dawn's not having any of it, because Dawn is the ultimate defense, and he's probably the only Primarch who is a hard counter to Alpharius. His gift.
Great point.
Because it's never really talks about Dawn's gift. But I think Dawn's gift is to be an indomitable defense. He can
He
see
is,
the weaknesses in everyone he fights and knows how to defend against it.
absolutely. Well, it's why he's the Praetorian. Because the same thing really comes up with Fulgrim. So I guess to clarify, Dawn's gift as the Praetorian, he's the indomitable defense, and he can analyze any opponent. And so when he fights Fulgrim, for example, in the Siege of Terra, afterwards he and Sanguinius talk about it, and it's quite clear because, as you might imagine, Fulgrim's the much better fighter, and you'd imagine this is easy Fulgrim victory. And even Dawn notices this, but he knows his brothers. And so when he fights Fulgrim, he knows that he just has to make Fulgrim basically lose his terror and run off in anger. And when he fights Alfarius, of course, Alfarius is doing the classic thing where there's like 3 Alpha Legionaries, and it could be any one of the 3. And Dawn walks in and he points straight to Alfarius, and he's like, I know which one you are. It's an amazing scene. Yeah, one of Dawn's finer moments, I think. Yeah.
With that scene where Dawn meets Alfarius, there's that conversation of ideologies, right? So Alfarius will do whatever it takes to win. Doesn't matter whether it's honorable or if it saves lives. And Dawn is like, no, we have to fight. We have to do a battle. It has to be honorable. There's no point doing this fight if it's not honorable, yada, yada, yada. And so that's where the two differ. But Alfarius says, were the losses that would have been incurred during this battle have been acceptable only because they were done in open battle? And Dawn is like, yes. That's the only reason. So what Alfarius takes away from that is, I have to defeat Dawn in open combat. This is the only way for Dawn to listen to me and respect me. And don't forget, Alfarius has a bit of an inferiority complex, because he's always felt like he's been sidelined and he's never had a really chance to prove himself, because that's kind of like the nature of his legion and the nature of why he was created. The idea is that Alfarius sees that the only way for me to get Dawn to listen to me is if I defeat him in close combat, right? Now, Dawn is like, well, he's like one of the ultimate fighters, okay? And Alfarius is a really good fighter, better than Lorgar, but he's not strong enough alone. Maybe Alfarius and Omegon together, but alone, he's not strong enough to defeat Dawn. So when he faces Dawn, the reason why Alfarius goes to face Dawn is because he knows he has to. It's the only way. Only Alfarius can beat Dawn, and so he has to fight him in open combat. And therefore, when he's saying to this, if we go back to the first book, Heads of the Hydra, the whole idea is that Dawn and Alfarius is trying to prove to Dawn all the things that was wrong with his defense, and he does, because in the next book, I think it's called Old Earth. When Dawn meets Vulcan, Dawn has made all these improvements. He's made all these improvements to his defense because of what Alfarius did.
Yeah.
And so it works, right? But he's defeated. So what I thought they were going to do now was Omegon was going to lower Horus's shields, because Omegon is the one who sneaks onto Horus's ship. And I thought they were going to do a parallel there, but they just didn't use the Alpha Legion whatsoever. You have Ingopek, who just gets left with bombs all over him, right? And I'm just like, what a savage way. Damn Abner does not respect his own Legion. He has like, it's a savage, man. I was so frustrated. But yeah, that's my kind of thought about Dawn and Alfarius. I think these two are like very polar opposites.
Yeah, well, we will talk about Ingopek in a sec, because I'd love to get your thoughts on that more. But there's just a few super chats and stuff to answer. Cheddar, Alfarius lives, and I still believe they're loyal, playing the long game, and double agents. My fave Chaos Legion, though. My own headcanon anyway. Love the channel, Sandman. You do great work. Keep it coming. Thank you so much. Happy Lawmas, guys. Paid and Barlow, thank you for the gift memberships. Thank you so much to everybody who supports the channel. It really means the world. I can't believe I get to do this. It's the coolest thing, and it's a dream. Charmsticks, member for 23 months. What is the lore explanation behind why the Alpha Legion listened to and sided with the Cabal in the first place? Too many years since I read the early Heresy books, if it was explained there. Yeah, I mean, they like we were talking about, they do actually betray the Cabal, and as does Eldrad Ulthuan. By the end of the Heresy, him and Barthus and Narek have assassinated them. But seemingly they think this is the best way to serve the Emperor's ultimate vision. That's the justification Alfarius uses. One of the big questions people ask is like, who knows the true one that has the true understanding of chaos? Because supposedly Malkador says only one of the Primarchs does. Seems most likely Alfarius, because he he says that the Emperor's true enemy is the Primordial Annihilator, and they're going to focus on that's destruction. And that does carry through to the heresy, because one of the codes within the Alpha Legionnaires is ignore everything, focus on chaos. And so I think that's it. Josh, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, so I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. I think the Cabal were just looking after their own interests. And the Alpha Legion are unpredictable. Like, going to the Legion, which is the master of lies and deception, similar to the First Legion, right? Like the Secret Keepers, the Alpha Legion are just not gonna do that. Like, why would they want to live in a galaxy? And there's also a plot hole there, is that chaos existed before humanity existed. It's not the destruction of humanity that would stop chaos. It's actually just the destruction of all emotional and sentient life that would stop chaos. So I think they kind of saw through that, because they knew that they'd probably been around. Obviously the Eldar birthed Slanesh when they went into all of that kind of decadence. So I think it just made sense for them just not to do that, to find an alternative like they always would. So yeah, the Cabal get wiped out. It makes sense for them to exist. I think Dan did it to kind of show the breadth of the galaxy, that there are other alien races out there. It's just like more like world building than anything else, maybe. But yeah, they all get killed off, so plan goes out the window anyway. So
yeah, that is very much done. So let's talk a little bit about Ingo Peck. I've gone through Ingo Peck's story on the channel before, but just to reiterate his situation at the end of the heresy, it is very much as you say. Ingo Peck had been basically psychically dominated by the witch Acte, and she had come to understand the way that these code words had been set up within the Alpha Legionnaires. And there are we don't know exactly how many, but there are supposedly a bunch of Alpha Legionnaires, just like we see in Praetorian of Dawn, sort of underneath the Imperial Palace, literally like in the concrete and like underneath everywhere in stasis. And if you find one of these Alpha Legionnaires and you awaken them and you say the right code word to them, you can get them to operate under certain orders. So Sagittari triggered loyalty to Horus, Xenophon triggered loyalty to the Emperor, Paramus triggered a directive of mutual annihilation to bring down both if deemed necessary, Thisbe triggered evacuation, Orpheus triggered a policy to ignore both sides and focus on chaos itself, to fight it or seize the means to control it. Now, Acte wanted to control chaos. That was her plan initially in the heresy, or the siege, was she wanted to... She thought Horus could be used in a similar way to like the Inquisition sort of believe this kind of thing sometimes in the Horusian books, where someone like Horus could be controlled to basically used to control chaos, used as a weapon. And so that was her aim. But we do know, according to Ingo Peck, he had been sent down under Xenophon. He loyalty to the Emperor. So we don't know exactly who triggered this within him, but presumably it was Omegon. And officially, the position of the Alpha Legion at the end of the heresy is loyalty to the Emperor. And John Grammaticus finds out that Ingo Peck has got loyalty to the Emperor triggered within him, but he's being psychically dominated by Acte, who has triggered Orpheus within him. And so he even though he doesn't like want to get rid of Ingo Peck because Ingo Peck's on their side, he can't be trusted because she can't be trusted, and so he pins a motion sensitive mine to Ingo Peck so that Ingo Peck cannot move without this mine going off. It does say he can use like kind of micro movements, and so maybe he can get himself free over time. But basically, at the end of the heresy, you've got this the first captain of the Alpha Legion frozen under the Imperial Palace, and he cannot move. And like hilarious, it just the idea that like it's so funny to me, because first you have these Alpha Legionnaires who are stuck under the Imperial Palace, which suggests to me there's going to be like a custodian one day opening a cupboard and there's just like an Alpha Legion in there. It's like, well, okay. And then you've got, presumably, I mean, I'm going to guess Constantine Valdor or someone's going to go down and they're just like, doing their checks, and just stuck in a hallway is just Ingo Peck, and they're like, what are you doing?
What are you doing here?
So it's incredible.
I think it's awesome. I'm super frustrated that that's how they did it. I think because he also has to fight. Who does he have to fight? He has to fight Herzog, Matthias Herzog, who's the second captain, and because he's been activated on the
Xenophon.
The Xenophon code phrase. So
yeah,
I mean, it's awesome. I think though, what we'll see is that they're probably leaving that thread for somewhere in 40K, maybe when Omegon makes a return. I think one of the reasons why that's really cool is because it just gives them a little bit more leeway to bring the Alpha Legion back in some way. Because
Oh,
they did have in that same book, the Head of the Hydra, Alfaris says, "I don't trust Dawn, don't trust him," and that's why I've got all of those troops at the bottom of underneath the palace that kind of backs me up or says so. So um, Alfaris, Omegon becoming Alfaris after his brother's death is to basically say like, oh, it's a joke. You know, the joke is now true, and that's so he kind of defends his memory, and so people, the Legion now follow Alfaris. They'll all come under Alfaris in the future, and then that name is recognizable as they go on into the future. So I think Ingo though is definitely alive.
yeah.
Now I haven't read all of the Inquisitor books, like Beckwin and all of those
Okay.
guys, and
I was
so I
just
haven't read
about
those.
to. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have heard like grapevine stuff that maybe Ingo Peck is the
Death Throne.
space marine that's running around with them,
Yeah. Yes.
which would make sense.
I believe even it's the case that Dan Abnett said in like a book tour or a book interview or something like that someone had asked him about it, and he sort of kind of confirmed that is what's going to happen. So
Cool.
yeah, we will see Ingo Peck, I think, most likely, and like the level of parallels or the level of connections between the End and the Death and the Beckwin series is unbelievable. He is very clearly setting a lot of stuff up. So Ingo Peck going to Death Row is a pretty. It's in terms of all like the out there theories, this is one of the smallest in my opinion. It seems pretty likely.
Yeah, I'm really hoping. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it shows up with the Mike Brooks series, the Harrow Master, Solomon Akura. Maybe he'll show up somehow, and he's got the spear now. So, or rather, he's got the two ends of the spear. He hasn't got the shaft, but he's got the two ends of the spear. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah. Well, on the artwork and stuff, he's wielding it as a spear, so he's still able to do so. And interestingly, I guess you would have been really excited about this, but is they in the rumor engines that Games Workshop release. If you don't play tabletop on Warhammer Community, every Thursday, Games Workshop release a picture of like a snapshot of an upcoming model, and one of the snapshots about 6 months ago, I guess now, was clearly the Pale Spear. It's a very iconic blade. And so it's either going to be like an Omegon model that's coming out, or perhaps even a Harrow Master model. And given that the second Harrow Master book is going to come out next year, that's been leaked already, then we can. It seems relatively likely he'd get a model. I mean, the Night Lords have got 2 squads now, so Alpha Legion deserve a character, don't they? I think that would be justified.
100%. 100%. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, yeah, I read the book. I enjoyed it. Obviously read what's the other one? Sons of the Hydra, which was really cool too. When they go looking for Omegon, and it turns out to be a shard of the Deceiver. So like, I think they are trying to build up to Omegon making an appearance, but I think they've obviously got to do the other Primarchs first. So probably allowing for like just a bit more background, because the problem with the Alpha Legion is like they're supposed to be the secret legion and you don't know anything about them, but that makes them like really, it's not very interesting to kind of build a story for. That's why people kind of use them as a sandbox legion, and why I say that is like they kind of put their own ideas onto them and their own, but they do have a character, they do have a background. So I think they're just now trying to flesh them out and make interesting characters, because if you notice, the Alpha Legion are pretty much always antagonists, unless it's their own book, and they lose. I think they pretty much lose in every book they're in. Either they're defeating each other, or they're kind of like, Alfaris in Seventh Serpent, I think is the only one where they kind of win, because they're successful in killing the loyalist Alpha Legion. But then Magician escapes, or not Magician, sorry, the Shuriken and his dudes escape. But like, you know what? Actually, one book, so now someone's mentioned it, I haven't actually read Shroud of Night. I know that there's a background around that these guys are, they still think they're loyal Space Marines. Because the Legion's pretty much broken, you've got all these different war bands that kind of don't know what to do. So some of them think they're loyal. Some of them don't want to ever go into the Eye of Terror. Some of them are hiding out in just plain sight. Some of them are pretending to be loyalist loyalist chapters, and the traitors. So like they're all scattered, waiting to be reactivated. And this is something that is said in the book, Portrayal of Dawn. A parallel between the Alpha Legion and being scattered everywhere is like when John French talks about Alpharis breaking down the spear. Pale Salonius repeats to him, no matter how many times it's broken, it's still the spear. So no many times the spear is like shattered, or the pieces are shattered and discarded and hidden, there's still the spear. But individually, they don't understand their place as the whole. So it takes someone to bring the Legion together. And that kind of what Mike Brooks is doing with the Pale Spear is sort of how, like, I think the Mandalorians are with that black saber. If you know anything about Star Wars and the Mandalorian, like that's whoever's got that is the person who can unite the Legion.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it, because in the Night Lords trilogy you have the same thing, right? Because Sahal has the Noxlith crown of Conrad Kurz, right? And so his book, his story ends with him, getting this crown as fuck off Eldar, and he can be like, well, now I've got this crown, I'm going to be the leader of the Night Lords. But ADB had to address this in his story, and he basically says, well, everybody does this. There's loads of Night Lords who've got some trinket of Conrad Kurz, and they're like, this makes me the leader. To be fair, the Pale Spear is a genuinely, obviously, important thing.
Unique.
But
one of it.
So it's a big thing. But yes, I do really like the. By the time you get to 40k, you have all these different warbands, and they're very different. And there's a big difference between 30k Alpha Legion and 40k Alpha Legion, in my opinion, because they're like you say, like there is this amazing scene in Harrow Master where they even kind of poke fun at the idea of I am Alpharius. Someone says it in the book, and they kind of laugh at him. They're like, that's funny. I think they say something like, you're basically the closest here to looking like Alpharius, given that we haven't had a reference for what Alpharius looks like in 10,000 years, something like that. Like and so
this is it. Go for it. Sorry.
No, I was just going to make a quick note on your point about how they never win, because one thing I did want to get your thoughts on is, because I mean, you already addressed, like, you think Omegon might come back in 40k, and that intrigues me because I'm not an Alpha Legion guy, right? I obviously like the faction, but I've always actually quite liked that Omegon dies. Not because his death is something in and of itself that's impressive, but because the Alpha Legion win that battle. So Gilliman gets his, like, quote-unquote victory. He kills the Primarch. But the Alpha Legion win. The Alpha Legion win the day their Primarch dies. They fight the Ultramarines into a retreat. And I can't help but think nobody could do that but the Alpha Legion. Like, that is an unbelievably impressive feat, to win without their Primarch. I don't think it's impossible that Omegon, because we'll have to see this story now in the Scouring. It would be very easy to leave in an Omegon survival, because if you had like one scene in the book where Omegon is messing around with some teleporter technology, or they were having a conversation about how he could switch places with people, or if he doesn't like do the explosion, then it would be very easy to make the case that Omegon has survived. But I sort of don't mind that Omegon dies, because the fact that the Alpha Legion then win is what's so impressive. But I guess, you like him to survive.
I think money, sadly. There's no way.
I can't remember what the figure was, but the amount of money that Mortarion made as a model was eye-watering. It's millions. Man. It's unbelievable.
Was he the first Primarch, or was it Gilliman was the first one to come back?
Magnus was first.
Magnus was first. Okay. Yeah. So, there you go. I think Nurgle sells really well. I think there's no way they would allow him to be dead fully because money, right? But I don't think... Right, so actually, I think this is a good point. This is a really good point to follow. So in Serpent Beneath, right?
Yeah.
Omegon gives Sheed Ranko, who's his equerry, or no, rather not his equerry, his second in command and leader of the commander of the Linnaean Terminator squads of company, models. Who are those like beefy, awesome Terminators, right? And he gives him a mission, makes him an effort, gives him a suicide mission, and gives him a droplet of his blood, which allows him to have some of his memories. Right, there we go, Sheed Ranko, bad man. And
with your name on the bottom, by the way, some artwork for you.
Yeah, come on, famous. So I think the Alpha Legion, one of the reasons why that he does that is so that Ranko can go in and convince his troops that he is Omegon and that they're fighting with him, and that's what kind of spurs them on to fight in a better, more effective way. And obviously, it turns out it's not Omegon, it's Sheed, and it was just a one-way mission to help the White Scars by blowing up the Tenebrae system or station rather, which removes the kind of silence in the warp and allows the signal for the White Scars to hear that Terra's under siege and they need to return.
We'll say as well, Jagatai Khan realizes this. So I remember he does say specifically that the Alpha Legion, you can't trust them, but they have done this to aid the White Scars. So the White Scars sort of know that the Alpha Legion are loyal, which is amazing to think.
Yeah. Even though the Alpha Legion are kind of like killing White Scars and keeping some of them trapped on Chondax, and there's a whole book and campaign about it, which is supposed to give you the idea that, the Alpha Legion do eventually fight in open combat. They are still a legion, but they just kind of do things along a bout way. So that idea of them sharing their blood and sharing memories is really important for the Alpha Legion. So who's to say at the Battle of Eskrindor, if that's how you pronounce Eskrindor, when Gilliman fights and defeats Omegon, it isn't just a Space Marine that has Omegon's memories and allows him to fight that way. It's true, the Alpha Legion are a legion that don't really need their Primarch because they've been taught to be very mutable. Right? They've been taught to be anyone can become a leader, from just like a normal trooper to a normal battle brother to a actual captain. That's where the Harrow Master rank, it's basically you are now the commander in this entire campaign. If someone gives you the rank of Harrow Master, you are now the de facto leader, unless Alpharis is there himself to control that situation. So the rank Harrow Master is an honor title that you give to a specific Marine. In the same way, Efret is an honor title, or Alfarius. If you're called Alfarius, it's a title. You yourself are now unimportant, and the rank or the name Alfarius is you become a weapon for the Legion. So there's so many layers to who the Alpha Legion are, and that's why when Gilliman loses in that battle, that's why Gilliman loses. I could believe you if you say that Omegon did die and there's no more Primarchs. They are all so well trained, and the hierarchy is so flat that a normal Space Marine who's talented enough can actually defeat a Primarch. Overall, maybe not in close combat, but overall. But I still think because of money, he's definitely not dead. But one interesting fact is that Kel Silonius is given the blood of Alfarius, right? And that's why even Kel knows that Alfarius is dead at the end of the Praetorian of Dawn. He knows he's gone. He feels it in his blood because he's sharing the blood. He knows. So he knows that Alfarius is dead. So only two people in the entire Legion at that time, Omegon and Kel Silonius, know that the Primarch is dead. But that's just another thing, because once they share their blood, that's how they share their memories. So it's super, super interesting. The term I am Alfarius is a joke between the Legion because some of the members started changing their face to look like Alfarius. Not all of them. So the Alpha Legion take
it's a bit of a misconception
everywhere. It's a misconception. Everyone thinks they all look the same. They don't. Only a handful of Marines look the same. And I don't blame people for thinking that, because it's a joke that gets passed around. But if you
there is a thing with the helmet on as well. With the helmet on, Alfarius can slip in. I think that's probably where the meme originated.
Where the meme comes from, because he's small, right? He's the smallest out of all the Primarchs. But the Alpha Legion themselves are really big. Like, they're huge.
Which is actually perfect for 40k, because that never made sense to me in 30k, because they were obviously, you know, they were bigger than everyone else. They're supposedly slipping into the Raven Guard, but like at the same time now in 40k they got the Primaris Marines. So maybe Primaris Marines were always planned guys. Maybe that was always that's obviously not true, but still.
No, come on. I don't think that there are any Alpha Legion Primaris.
Supposedly, Akura's like greatest achievement is he has properly infiltrated the Inquisition now. Yeah, there's an Alpha Legionnaire who was just very high in the Inquisition. This is generations in the making, and he literally says it's their. I can't remember the exact wording, but he does say it's their greatest achievement that they have properly infiltrated the Inquisition, and I'm sure that will be a major plot point in the second book. So I can't wait to see that. Yeah.
I think that part is where they have the last of the what they're called, white consoles or something.
No, it's not the white consoles, but yes, I do. I'll Google it now.
The last of that chapter.
Yeah.
And
which
they're not,
which is a fantastic. Which again, lovely bit of writing by Mike Brooks, because that connects into the head of the Sons of the Hydra story, which is just. Great that he did that. He's very good like that.
I think they're all talking to each other. I think the Alpha Legion are like
they're really at least Facebook friends.
Exactly. Just ask each other for advice and stuff and tips. I do think the Alpha Legion are like one of the most interesting legions. I think unfortunately fan theories has kind of put people off. But if you actually make the decision for yourself, read the books, actually understand the multiple layers between them. You'll see that they are probably one of the coolest legions out there, because they're just, no one really knows what they're doing. They themselves don't have a good idea. In fact, they're so big, I think they're actually the biggest legion.
That is the rumor is, yes, they're definitely that. And even in 30k, that is the rumor, because of course it's sort of a brilliant twist, is that, because like there's a really cool little story which I think actually appears the Chris Wright wrote a version of it, and Mike Brooks wrote a similar version of it in Head of the Hydra, where Alfarius, as a normal legionary, goes to the Lion. This is during the Ranked and Xenocides. This is during the period where Alfarius hasn't been revealed, and in actual fact, the Alpha Legion are not rumored to exist. They're the Ghost Legion, and people think there's only 19 legions. And so during the Ranked and Xenocides, he goes to the Lion, and he actually he's buttering up the Lion basically, because the Lion wants to be War Master, and he's basically just kind of trying to learn all about his brothers, and it's an amazing scene. And so like the Alpha Legion is thought to not exist for most of the Great Crusade, and then when they're revealed, the rumor is all of a sudden they're the biggest legion, bigger than the Ultramarines. Like just ridiculous. Amazing. Like so cool.
They're scattered. Like if you're the biggest legion and you know you're dangerous and you know you're the youngest legion, why would you reveal everyone at once? That's why I think a lot of the legion are buried underneath the Emperor's Palace.
That'd be so good. What a campaign that will do.
Just gonna pop up, and then the Imperium's lost from the get-go if they wanted to.
You know, they did that campaign of Gene Stealer cults on Terra. That was cool. Can you imagine? Cool. Like the custodians finally kill the last Gene Stealer cult, whatever, on Terra, and then all of a sudden, just like a legion of Alpha Legion. That would be. I mean, that is definitely something they've got in the bank, that they can just pull the cord on that. Any chance of a stock price drop, they got that one. That's. I really hope they don't forget about that. It hurts my soul to think that might happen, but I think the Alpha Legion are pretty much in every legion, and I think one of the things to take away from Mike Brooks's recent book Horror Master is that they don't even know that they're Alpha Legion, right? Because they've gone through the psycho reconditioning that removes their own memories, so they don't know who they are, right? And it's not until he has the code phrase is that pulls out his memory for him to be like, oh yeah, I'm an Alpha Legionnaire. Here we go. And so you don't know how many different chapters have Alpha Legionnaires in them, but do not know about it. So this is another reason why I really like the Alpha Legion, is because if they can't infiltrate like the Legion through just like normal means, and I think someone's mentioned it in the chat about the Raven Guard. Oh yeah, Blankia has mentioned the Raven Guard, right? When on Istavan, they kill
or they find the corpses of some of the Raven Guards,
Yeah.
and they take their memories, or some of them that are still alive, they take their memories, and then they take their faces and put their memories into their mind, so they believe that they are
Yeah.
they believe that they're those Raven Guards. And during the book Deliverance Lost, you've got the one Marine who's like doing all these moves, and he defeats this Raven Guard during training, and they're like, "Where did you learn that?" He's like, "Oh, I picked it up on Istavan." Yeah, lol. And almost gives himself away, right? And they all end up passing, they all end up dying anyway. But like the idea that they will go through all these lengths just to get into Legion. The only Legion that they are known to not be able to infiltrate successfully is the Space Wolves, and that's because they smell differently. They don't have the scent. So the Space Wolves are able to pick them up and be like, "Oh, that's weird. You're not one of us." And then they kill him. So he tries and he gets killed. So that's the only Legion where they struggle. And even the Thousand Sons, for some reason, and all the Thousand Sons are psychers. They have some kind of psychic ability, right? And so Magnus is like, keep the Alpha Legion away from my Legion, basically, because for some reason the Alpha Legion are able to get into the Thousand Sons.
A bunch of them nearly beat Gilliman to death, like in
exactly,
like, which is awesome. Such a weak point of the Ultramarines lore, in my opinion.
Yeah, like where is your blade I gave you? Lol, I lost it.
It's literally that scene, you know, in Shrek where Fiona's like, "Sir Knight, take off your helmet," and he's like, No, my lord. It was a tough battle. I'm a bit messed up." And Gilliman's like, "Why aren't you taking off your helmet?" It takes Gilliman like 10 seconds. You're like, "Come on, man."
Something's weird about you, bro.
And they do nearly kill them. I think there's 10 Alpha Legionary in the room, and it's basically that scene from Captain America where Gilliman's just he's naked and he's just like
fighting them off. And he's like, "Any last words?" Typical villain. "Any last words?" Just shoot him. I don't know, man.
I am conscious that you might have to head off. How are you doing for time?
I've got a bit of time.
Brilliant. Well, this is amazing. So I'm having such a good time. And chat is loving it as well. So let's do some questions. Actually, I'll try and find some ones that you're probably better poised to answer than me. Where are we? I like the idea that the Alpha Legionary are Chaos Marines in a literal sense and have no comprehensible goal. Yeah, I guess there is some of that. I mean, one of the things that like Mike Brooks makes it pretty clear in Harrow Master, that is not all of the Alpha Legion. Even though it's a decent chunk, I think it's the one segmentum, then it's by no means all of them. So the idea that all of that Harrow Master lore is completely canon and true and like a big focus of the Alpha Legion in the future, but then they still can pull out Omegon. And none of these guys are in the know. Makes perfect sense. There's really no canon there, and that's sort of the beauty of it. And in a way, like, one of the weird things about the Alpha Legion, mate, I've always found is that, and I guess you talked about this earlier, when they keep losing, is because being behind everything is sort of the worst trait for a Legion, because you can never live up to it in the story. You can never have a story like Praetorian of Dawn, which you talked about earlier. In that, I mean, for 75% of the book, the Alpha Legion just crush it. Everything is just, it goes off. You know, it reveals that this guy is this guy, and then this guy is Alfarius, and then this guy is this guy, and then he sacrifices himself, and Alfarius, and he's just like, oh my god, and like, Dawn stands no chance. It's complete disaster. But then of course how can John French deliver on that? How can outside of an easy Horus victory, what do you do? So Alfarius just allows himself, basically just allows himself to be challenged by Dawn. He doesn't have to. And so...
No, doesn't have to. I think the Alpha Legion, Alfarius is like, aha, come catch me, right? And I think that one of the reasons why it's a cool book is because, what's his name? What's the guy who gets his second in the command? His name's gone on my head.
Sorry, say again?
Come on, chat. What's the name of the Praetorian of Dawn? Not the actual... Arcamus. That's it. Thanks. Arcamus.
Yes.
So Arcamus is basically a detective. So it becomes a bit of like a detective story. And I think the Alpha Legion are cool because they spend most of their time running away, but also reacting. And like people kind of, it goes over most people's heads, but the Alpha Legion, most of the members at this point are insane. Like they've kind of lost their identity. Some of them have really weird quirks. Like some of them are like fiddling, and some of them can't look straight. And then when they're together, suddenly like they're like serpent heads, and they all kind of turn and look the same way, and that sort of thing. So
that's a good analogy.
Like, the reason I'm thinking about this is because in that book, I think this is one of the first Imperial Fist books we've had, right? Where the Imperial Fists are front and center, so they have to look like the heroes of the scene. They haven't had any books up to this point, where the Alpha Legion have been in at least multiple books and have done something right. So I think they kind of had to lose, but I don't know if Alpharius had to die really. But I think it just makes it more interesting because until this point, no Primarch has really kind of passed away. So not really. Ferris and Conrad is still alive. He's just missing. So we just needed another Primarch, really, didn't we? So
and to be fair, that would have already been determined that Alpharius was going to die. I think Black Library. I believe the official stance on Black Library to this day, I will say, is that Alpharius is dead. But I don't think they've given an official stance on Omegon. So there we go. But it's like you say, that it was it's their first proper appearance, and because of course they're in reinforcing Terra throughout most of the siege, so you don't see too much of them. And in fact, it's kind of, I didn't like Dawn when I first the first time you see him is him being very rude to Garrow, and I don't like people who are rude to Garrow. So that's anyway, Sandman, exclamation mark. If Perturabo, I'm guessing, understands any type of machine he looks at, would he understand the Golden Throne? You know the lore much deeper, so I feel like you could give me an answer. The Golden Throne is... so it's a great point, and it is true to say that Perturabo has this sort of genetic component to him where he does understand, well, not just machines, really, like he can understand anything, and over time he really can. And even he was like born with like genetic understandings of technologies. His lore's really cool like that. But the Golden Throne, not even the Emperor properly understands the Golden Throne. That's the problem. So the core, the sort of like the big reveal of the Golden Throne is that the core components of it are Xenos. And the reason I say that's a big reveal is because if you open any 40k novel, it starts off with this little passage about the Emperor of Mankind being kept alive by technology from the Dark Age. That is not true. It's Xenos technology, which of course sounds much more heretical to the average Imperial citizenry. But also, it's why the Adeptus Mechanicus cannot fix anything, because it's the Fabricator General talks about how it's got these Xenos sigils on it, and they don't say what they are. The Drukhari are allegedly able to fix some parts of it. They don't in the end, but they are allegedly able to. I suspect it's an older one's device. That's what I imagine it is. And so whether Perturabo can fix that, I doubt it. But if any of the Emperor's sons can, he stands a chance. I mean, this is why, the return of Vulcan, probably the most important Primarch return, because someone has to save the Emperor at some point, and the Mechanicus have now they've nearly openly betrayed the Imperium, and at the very least they're getting there in modern 40k. Payden, thank you so much. Do you suppose that one of the twins can find themselves to die by dawn? So I don't think he necessarily wanted to die, but I'm sure he accepted that was an option, because as we talked about earlier, like when he does face Dawn, he says like, I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to ensure Horus's defeat. That's what he says, and he repeats it, and he's trying, like, and that's what we were just talking about. Alpharius could have done anything that day. He probably could have made a play for the throne room. He has done everything so perfectly. They planned this so often, and like to like what Josh was talking about earlier, you have like even his own memories had been like blanked for a while, and he gets them back, and like he planned this so hard and so long, and he's just so on top of Dawn that he could have done everything. So we can be pretty certain that he was trying to bring Dawn to his understanding, but I guess it's sorry. The last thing I'll say is I guess it's what Josh was talking about earlier. It's the when Omegon gives Horus the blueprints of the Imperial Palace, that is the last massive asset he gives to Horus, and it's a big thing. It's a big deal. So that's the only thing he gets out of it, really, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think something again, treat the books like pieces of the puzzle, right? We're not gonna understand it all until we've got pretty much all of the books from the Alpha Legion written and delivered to us, right? Because even in Head of the Hydra, Alpharius says the reason why I let my Marines challenge me, other legions won't allow their subordinates to challenge me. Other Primarchs won't allow their subordinates to challenge them. But I do it because I know that I trust them and they've got good ideas. And Alpharius says my plans rarely fail, but when they do, they are memorable. And that's a really key point because, and it drops it on that. It trails off and goes to the next paragraph or chapter. And the reason that's important is because the most memorable failure Alpharius has where his plan fails is getting killed by Dawn. And that's what we remember. Everyone remembers that fight, right? Everyone remembers that Dawn defeats Alpharius. So this is like a really important, again, another thread to prove to you that Alpharius is gone. And it's frustrating for people because no one wants to think Alpharius is dead. Like, why? You know, he's the super villain that can't be killed. But Alpharius has a twin, so it makes sense for him to pass on and for Omegon to get. And Omegon's at this point is super depressed now. Like, he's like, well, my brother's dead. I didn't even really want to fight this war. The plans I had have kind of fallen apart. At the end of Serpent Beneath, Omegon is like depressed because he's like, you know, nothing I did actually mattered. So I end up having to he's like, I can't pull these ideas together. I can't stop the Cabal, or rather I can't stop what's coming. And no matter how hard he tries, he's failing. So that's why at the end, he shatters the dagger and just leaves. Just makes his way to, he wakes up Ingopek, leaves Terra, makes his way across the other side of the galaxy with the rest of his troops. So yeah, man, I think like it's super interesting. And like Primarchs, Primarchs getting killed by other Primarchs is always going to be a memorable thing. So I just wanted to bring in that thread.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. So another question, which we already talked about a bit actually, or Josh did, sorry. When Dawn killed Alpharius, he exploded, right? Did any other Primarchs explode like that when they died? So whilst George was talking, I was just putting up Fulgrim on Kindle to try and find the exact wording. So, the silver blade clove the air as it swept towards Ferrus Manus, and Fulgrim felt the ancient triumph of the presence that he now knew had dwelt within it all this time. He tried desperately to pull the blow, but his muscles were no longer his own to control. Unnatural warp-forged steel met the iron flesh of the Primarch, its aberrant edge cutting through Ferrus's skin, muscle, and bone with a shrieking howl that echoed in the realms beyond those knowable to mortal souls. So I think that this is sort of a similar thing. But yeah, it does say blood and monumental energies bound within the meat and gristle of one of the Emperor's sons erupted from the wound, and Fulgrim fell back as the searing powers blinded him, dropping the silver sword at his side. He heard a shrieking wail as of a choir of banshees whip around him as a phantom skeletal hands clawed at him, and 1,000 voices tore at his mind. So yeah, Ferrus Manus also sort of explodes, and it's a really good point. Because this doesn't happen when like the Horus clone dies, for example, and there's often when we talk about Primarch clones, it's a really interesting conversation because like you were talking about earlier, Josh, a lot of their memories are kept in their blood, so they have kind of like Primarch memories, but they don't explode when they die. So like there seems to be
there's no warp soul.
There's no fire stolen from the Chaos Gods within them.
Yeah, so, there's none of that.
That so we can be pretty confident that Ferrus died, and I guess that is the precedent now. So when we read the story of Omegon's death, we'll all be looking to see whether he explodes, and if he doesn't, then I'll be straight on. It's a visual. So hey ho, but yeah, it is an amazing. It's a cool consistency to have now. Anyway, I believe that the twin that died to Dawn is Omegon, and Alpharius is still alive because I think Omegon is slightly more self-centered and rational than Alpharius. This is a really common question in theory. So I actually asked Mike Brooks about this. And one of the reasons I asked Mike Brooks, even though he didn't write that novel, is because Mike Brooks wrote Alpharius, Head of the Hydra. And when he wrote that book very famously starts off with, "My name is Alpharius. This is a lie." And or I am Alpharius' line. Anyway, and a lot of people have taken that, and given that in that story, Alpharius and Omegon do switch, because when Omegon meets Alfarius, it's actually meets Horus, sorry, it's actually Alfarius meeting Horus, right? Because they've switched. However, Mybrook said to me he only intended the switched account for that scene. He didn't intend the switched account like forever, which is how a lot of people have taken it. And so officially, it is we treat Alfarius as having died. Now, to clarify, that doesn't necessarily mean they won't change it. There are so many things that like fans react in a certain way, and it does change. Like ADB, that's on the channel, he never intended to summon the Legion of the Damned in the webway, but he said he quite liked the theory. He quite liked that lore, and so maybe they'll go that way in the future. But so yeah, we will see. And also, the writers aren't going to necessarily reveal everything to idiot YouTubers, are they? So I guess we will see. So it's not entirely impossible that was Omegon, but officially we treat it as Alfarius. But if it's your headcanon, fair play. Like
I spoke to him about it. I spoke to Mike about it, and he says they do switch, but only so because remember, like Alfarius says to Omegon, like, I want you to meet our brothers, and so they take turns switching. So they take turns switching to meet the other Primarchs and showing up, right? And you know, even what's his name, Russ is like, oh, it's they're kind of talking. So what are you supposed to be? And he's like, oh, I keep the secrets. And he says, oh, that's really interesting. Interesting that it's a pity there's only one of you. So even Russ has an idea that something's amiss, but doesn't really know. He doesn't expect there to be two, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the book, Alfarius says to him, how am I going? It says to Omegon, I've got an idea of how we can introduce you to the Imperium. And so that's Omegon's way of getting introduced to everyone, because he gets found on Horus's ship. And by that time, they still swap, because the Alpha Legion, they're mutable, right? That's the joke. Twins. I've got twins in my youth group class that I look after, and they're always playing tricks on me of who's who. They're identical. And it's a common joke between twins to like play tricks on people to figure out who's who. So it's a very common thing.
I have a twin, and we used to do it all the time. It didn't work very well because she's a girl, but we still tried.
Yeah. So there you go. So I don't know. Maybe,
but she looks exactly like me with long hair,
yeah.
So it works. It works fine. Yeah.
So it works. And I think that's all it is. And I think people have just said, "Oh, see, like Alfarius is alive." No, he's gone. And I think the point is, the reason why we even have the Head of the Hydra book is because it's safe to do so. Alfarius is gone. That's why they're allowed now to flesh him out, and they're allowed to pull in all these different threads. And I think people just need to read Head of the Hydra again, and they will start pulling the parallels, understanding why Alfarius and Dawn is such a big deal, why those two are the ones that needed to fight each other, why Dawn killing Alfarius makes sense, why there's like legionnaires underneath the palace. All of these threads are done for a reason. So it's like the whole reason Alfarius, because so I think one of the main themes of Praetorian of Dawn is pride. Pride from the Imperial Fists, because they think they're better than everyone else. No, Praetorian of Dawn, yeah. Did I say
Praetorian and prejudice?
It's like, oh, I say pride and prejudice, yeah. Oh, I'm so slow. So that idea is like that they are supposed to. Alfarius dies because of his arrogance. He thinks that he's good enough to defeat Dawn. He's not, and he loses. So I think that's like something that people need to I would say like something to focus on and kind of pull into, is because that's quite an important topic. So yeah.
No, for sure. It's it's really funny you say that, because of course I get a lot of comments going the other way, where if I reference Head of the Hydra, people will be like, well, that's not necessarily true because it's an account of Alfarius. And Mike Brooks has said, if you really want to interpret it, it's just not true. That is fine. You can say that this is just Alfarius' account and it's completely made up. The best counter I have against that is that I'm a relatively fun person, and I would never read a novel and then just disregard it, because what is the point of that?
What's the
like
point?
like there's just like the unreliable narrator idea of 40k is definitely present. Like if you have a look at the rule books or the codexes, there's all this like lore that if you've read the books, you know, actually that's not quite right. Like they deliberately put in little things so you can like, you know, discover the truth. The writers, of course they do that kind of thing. But the idea that Mike Brooks just wrote an entire book for no reason, that seems a bit crap. I think I would I'd treat it as canon. But until to be clarified, if there was conflicting information that seems more plausible, I'd go with that. But so far there isn't. So yeah,
there isn't, and I think like Mike has already. I spoke to him about it. You've spoken to him. He's already said that Alfaris is dead. Omegon is Omegon. Alfaris is Alfaris, unless specified. Unless the switch is specified. And even in Legion, Dan Ebnett's book, when Alfaris like shows up, it's not Alfarius, it's Ingo Peck. And then he says that's the other guy is Omegon, and it's not Omegon, it's Sheed Ranko, and they're always playing jokes on each other. So like they're always switching. So I think maybe it's because people don't know how important Omegon is. And Omegon has always been this kind of shadow Primarch sitting in the back, like kind of doing things for the better of the Legion, even against his own brother. And Primarch brothers don't always agree, twins don't always agree, even though they're so similar. They always have their own thoughts. So they're individuals. So it's like it makes sense. So Omegon didn't grow up with Terra. He didn't grow up with Alfarius, and he is a bit more brutal. But he still wants to do right by the Imperium. Okay, so Omegon would gladly sacrifice an entire like planet in order to stop the Imperium from like losing the larger battle. But he's still loyal, and I think that's why it's like a really important thing. Like he's a Primarch that I'm excited to see more of, because I think there's a lot more to him. Second thing. This artwork is really interesting because it shows Alfarius wearing the Pythian scales, and we know that when Alfarius fights Dawn, he's not wearing his Primarch armor. He's just wearing his normal Headhunter armor that we see in Head of the Hydra. So it's this because he has a reflective.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's not wearing.
Because I remember Dawn points to the one that is in most refinery, doesn't he, or something like that?
Yes, but this is
it's
during
still not his. Okay,
it's not. No, that's correct. That's the Pythian scales. Yeah, but that is specifically when they're in the throne room, right? He's not wearing his Pythian scales when he infiltrates Pluto and comes back. He's wearing just normal Headhunter armor because this is when when like he first appears. And they're all running around. Like everyone knows what the Primarch's armor looks like. Yeah. So the other headhunters are like, "Oh, why are you just dressed as like you're just a normal Marine?" He has to fit in. So he's just wearing his like artificial headhunter armor, stealth armor. Yeah. And that's why when he gets shot
this armor,
which is like Mark. What's that? Mark 3 artificial armor. Right, and it's the same armor that he's got on during the Head of the Hydra. This is why Alfarius is so easy for Dawn to kill, because the armor the blade just chews through his armor, just destroys him because he's not wearing Primarch armor.
I mean, it's a mighty kill, isn't it? I mean, as you can see in this artwork here, cuts through his hands, impales him with his own spear, like brutal. And
he's not wearing Primarch armor, so I think that even the noise that sounds like ripping in cloth is the sound of the spear moving. Because I think it's a Necron weapon. I think it's hinted at being a Necron weapon somewhere. We don't really know what it is. Even where Omegon gets his armor from is never really mentioned. It's never really kind of specified where he gets the blade from, where he gets the armor from. But it just fits him, right? So it's just glossed over. It's completely glossed over. But another thread, slight tangent, another thread I think that people maybe not covering is what if there's more than the two of them?
Oh my! I did not think you would indulge that theory. Okay,
I'm
very surprised. Like I'm surprised by that. All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, the board
Okay.
is set. It's
Yeah, the
like,
board is. We'll explain that. We'll explain what that is. So that's a short story.
Yeah.
Heralds of the Siege, I want to say it takes place, where Malkador is able to kind of communicate with the Emperor when the Emperor's on the Golden Throne, and they play Regicide. And when they play this game, it's not. It was like a twisted version of Regicide, isn't it, or something?
Yeah.
And so they play this game where they play out the Horus Heresy, where all the pieces are Primarchs. They're not called the Primarchs, and it's they have like the lion is the double-edged sword, the Ferrus Manus is the Iron General, things like that, right? And it's a really fascinating scene. It was actually one of the first videos I ever done on the channel, like years ago, because in this passage it gives you a lot of insights into how the Emperor sees the Primarchs. And for example, double-edged sword implies he knows the lion, the Dark Angels might betray the Imperium. He's unsure about the Khan's allegiance. He even hints that he might be able to resurrect Ferrus Manus. Sorry, that's the background to this scene. You go ahead with the Alpha Legion.
So there's that part where basically Malkador, or I think it's the Emperor, plays the Joker or the twins, and then it becomes 5. It becomes like 5 different models as opposed to just the 2. Okay, and I think that's a really interesting thing. And the reason I bring that up is only because at the end of Mike Brooks's book, The Lion, when the lion is fighting the memories of his brothers.
Yeah,
he punches Alfaris, and it says that his body responds 5 times, and it's just glossed over. No one ever mentions it again. But this is a really key part in that book where he's punching him, and it shifts 5 times before moving on to the next brother, the next Primarch. So I do think.
Do you think there's 5?
I don't know. I don't know. It's the only thing that I'm not sure about, but it's the theme that I want to pick your brain because they've mentioned it.
Okay. All right. I have these books. I have these books on Kindle. So it is Heralds of the Siege. I can never remember which short story goes here. So I'm genuinely really proud of myself that I remembered this one. So twins. With a grunt, Malkador laid his finger on the sculpted tip of the piece closest to him, the same as he always did whenever they played from the outset. At his touch, the surface of the piece rippled, becoming a figurine. It was rendered abstractly so that the arms and legs ended in smooth nubs rather than hands and feet, giving the figure no front or back. Only the face possessed any detail. Faces, in fact, one looking in each direction. The twins, it was called. The sigillite lifted the top card with thin fingers and turned it over. Colour swirled across the psycho-reactive crystal, coalescing into the many-headed Hydra. All places and none, said Malkador. He set the piece in the home squares directly in front of him. Revelation's the Emperor. Revelation touched the piece, and under his attention it transformed into a raven sat upon a broken skull, talons digging into the bone. The revealed card turned black, and Revelation moved his piece to one side also. I think it's mentioned one more time. Yes. Okay. Oh, this is what you're talking about. Revelation moved the Hydra back to the center and took a card, an ancient set of scales in perfect balance. Division, he announced. The twins' pieces became 2, each identical. Without hesitation, he set one before Malkador and the other in front of himself. So this implies that the Emperor knows that one twin, at the very least, is going to remain loyal to him. And so, which is one of the only times, to clarify, that we see the Emperor actually acknowledge that there's Alferis and Omegon, because even in Head of the Hydra, there's no acknowledgement that the Emperor knows this.
No knowledge.
And so, then Malkador accuses him of cheating, of course. And then later on, one final mention. He nodded for Malkador to turn the next card. He took the silver of crystal and turned it over. The face clouded, turned into a bluish green, and then resolved into the shape of a Hydra. At the same time, both of the twins turned red, joining the War Master. Immediately, Malkador saw that he could move one of them into the space that had been occupied by the invisible bastion, forcing a capitulation. So that's basically that's a nod to Praetorian of Dawn. So I don't know.
Oh no! I remembered that completely wrong. I don't know. Split and see some more heads.
I have definitely got Lionel Johnson's in the Forest somewhere, but and you are right. Like that passage is Mike Brooks having a bit of a fan fest for the Lion, because it's like, you know, the Lion's actually one of the few Primarchs that because the interesting thing about Primarchs is that most of them don't actually meet in the books. Like we see very few interactions with all the Primarchs, and so the fact that the Lion's able to fight, have something to say to most of them at the very least, is kind of funny. Although some of them are just sort of jokes, like he makes fun of Magnus for being weak. He's like, I know you're a trick because Magnus never hit that strong. You're like, ooh, burn. So when he fights Alfarius in Lionel Johnson's Son of the Forest, or the demon thing that takes the form of Alfarius, you think he trusted you with his secrets, Alfarius laughs from the ground. I know secrets you could never guess at first. Which of course is a fantastic joke because the lion is the first son, but Alfarius is technically the first found son, although no one really knows it. Arms sees the lion from behind, wrapping around his neck and hauling him around in a half circle, but he reaches up to prise them loose and drops down to one knee to throw the attacker off again. Alfarius rolls up to his feet, no longer smiling. The version of him that had been lying on the ground is nowhere to be seen. You never did have the stomach for a fair fight, the lion growls. When the Lord of Serpents throws a punch, he twists Alfarius' arm around and drives him face first into the column which bears the scars of Horus's talon. The impact pleases the lion so much that he does it again and then tries to do it a third time. This time, however, the arm braces itself against the pillar. Against the pillar is stronger than his, and then Angron rocks up. So is that what you're referring to? The fact that the lion tries to hit him for a third time, and you think that's what Mike Brooks is hinting at?
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
I will just say, sorry, it's just some background to this because we're pretty deep in Alpha Legion lore at this point. For people who are a bit newer, the Alpha Legion symbol has 3 heads of the Hydra. And so a lot of people have obviously theorized over the years that maybe there's a third twin. Now, I have never given this much credence, to be honest, as a theory. I mean, I've nothing to clarify. If it's your fan theory, I think that's great. More power to you. But I've never really believed it a lot. But I'm interested to hear that you do, Josh. I'm sort of surprised. Like, yeah.
Well, clearly I'm remembering it wrong. Oh, damn.
No. I will say
Go for it.
I will say, to be fair, we don't know why there's 2 twins. And when when we see, for example, the few scenes that are Primarchs, that they have like Horus, for example, or Argol Tau, when they're in the room with the Primarch with babies, there's only 20 pods and 20 Primarchs. So there's no Omegon pod, which is always suggested to me, and especially given that Alfarius and Omegon are one soul in 2 bodies, that they get split by the Chaos Gods or something in the warp. And that's also supposedly, it's like, Sanguinius supposedly gets his wings from the warp, is the implication, because wings do not come from the Emperor. So perhaps it's not impossible that there's a third. That is certainly an option there, but there's no. I've never read a notion of it in the lore, but I guess you could have stuff like that. Yeah.
Argol Tal says that when they're looking through, I might have got this wrong too, but when they're looking through the pods, there's one in there with too many limbs. And so that kind of gives me the idea. But Alfarius and Omegon argue about it. Yeah, that's something I do roughly remember being said. But you can fact check me on that as well. But I do remember.
That's all right.
It's good. That's good that you're doing it because I clearly remember it wrong. I'll have to go back.
You know what? It's very. You know what is really funny about you saying that is how I can tell that you actually read the books, because people who actually read novels will understand that no one remembers everything. Like you and I have probably both read novels where Black Library authors misremember their own books. And so like when YouTubers do the thing of going like, I've read every book and I never make any mistake, I'm like, no, you haven't. That's not a thing.
That's not a thing. Yeah.
It's what you've done is you've memorized the wiki, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. No, I pride myself in making sure I can read every book I can, if I haven't. But it's cool. Okay, so that kind of changes the theory. I guess the third head in the Extermination book is supposed to represent the Legion because it's the Alpha, the Omega, and the Sigma.
Yes, someone asked earlier, would it be Sigma? And I thought that was funny, but I hope to God no.
Please no. But I think that's meant to represent the Legion. But Alfarius and Omegon talk about how they were created.
Yeah.
And they kind of hint that maybe they were split in the warp, and that's how they showed up. Yeah. But they don't know. They themselves don't know how there's 2 of them, and only the Emperor knows. So, but the Emperor's even to Alfarius, he's like, yeah, I've just found you, and you're the only one that I found so far, and lands on her. So, yeah, maybe there is a third Primarch. I doubt it because Omegon has said, I'm alone. So I think that kind of solidifies the fact that there's only two, right? He says, I'm alone. He knew that he was a part of a greater whole. And now it's like, have you got the Praetorian of Terra? Praetorian of Dawn?
Yes, yeah. Oh, I have all the Heresy on Kindle. Yeah, no, he definitely says, I am alone. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to that scene, maybe you can bring it up. But he says it's alone, so he knows, and it's like damning, and then the joke is finally made true. So I don't think there's a third one. I think there's only two.
That is true, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, there's definitely... the search function on Kindle is awful. So Omegon woke. He had never slept. Omegon woke. He had never slept, had never dreamed, or felt the tug of mortal fatigue in all the days of his existence. Yet here he was, waking from black oblivion, the cold deck of the ship beneath him, the darkness of his arming chamber close about him. The pulse of the Beta's engines was a distant rumble on the edge of the silence. Coldness poured through his flesh. Moisture beaded his skin. He could taste blood in his mouth, thick and harsh with iron. His hands were numb, the fingers hooked as though grasping something that had vanished. He moved the fingers and then brought them up to his face. Sharp needles of pain prickled beneath his touch. And then a new feeling came, crushing in its weight, undeniable in its truth, even though he could not tell how it had arrived. He was alone. And then it repeats the word alone multiple times in that chapter. So, yeah, he definitely, it seems to be implying that he knows he's alone.
Yeah, he knows he's alone.
Have the other Primarchs met Omegon, Big Monkey King? Good question. So, like Josh was sort of talking about earlier, the answer is yes, and they didn't know it really. So, Alfarius and Omegon do sort of like, part of it is because Malcador wants them to, and part of it is just because they're interested, and they literally infiltrate other legions at times. Like they're there the day some of the Primarchs are found, even, and they're literally within their sense. Yeah. And so, of course, Omegon was last. Yeah. So, yeah, it's all that kind of thing, and there is. I'd have to remember the exact wording, but I can't. There is a suggestion that maybe Rogue or Dawn could tell. Like some people have theorized that, but again, that plays into his Primarch ability. He's able to detect things, but again, nothing is clear. And I know Alpha Legion fans will want to pretend that they're on top of everything the whole time. So more power to him.
No, I think that's the funny thing. So Alfarius has met every Primarch, but Omegon hasn't met all of them. They've met the majority. It's hinted that they've met the majority. We definitely know he's met Russ. We definitely know he's met Horus, because that's the day he's found.
No, it's Alfarius.
Horus. Yeah. Alfarius has met one. I think it's really interesting that you can have this jokey legion. They're kind of like the kind of ace in the hole legion that they're supposed to be. They're the contingency legion.
They are. Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right, and that's something they stand by, to this day, like you were talking about earlier, that there are in Harrowmaster and in Sons of the Hydra, there are Alpha Legion who truly believe they are on the side of the Emperor and that they are playing the long game, and even the idea of when Omegon returns, we can go ahead with the big play. But whether that is true, who knows, or whether they are just lost to the madness is the question. But they will definitely have, it's really, I really like in these streams. It's often really fun to do because people ask questions and I have to say yes, but that's like an end times thing, right? So the Alpha Legion will have their big end times play that will come. But who knows when the stock price drops enough. Old facts.
There we go. Vindication. Read it.
Whatever made you think there was only one Hydra card? He picked up the next four and fanned them towards the region, each of them showing the same design of the many-headed Hydra. The board is set. Thank you, brother. So that's the card that makes them split, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's the five-headed thing. I think maybe that's what I remember, but maybe I'm probably interpreting.
I got you. Yes. Yeah, okay. Great quote. Quote.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few questions we can talk about the new Drop Sign Massacre book, and the truth. So Josh is a big lore guy, and so he didn't want it to be spoiled. So I have tried not to spoil it too much for him today. But people are really liking the stream. So if people really like this, I will probably do like a proper video on it, maybe, because I should stress, I sort of ambushed Josh with this. Josh thought we were recording a video, and I was like, oh no, I'm doing it live for Lormus, and he was like, oh, I didn't know. So you've done phenomenally well, given that you were not prepared for this. But I tell you what, we'll do maybe a proper video when we talk about Drop Site Massacre, and maybe a deeper dive on Alpha Legion loyalties to the Imperium, and we can go through all of the quotes one by one for that if people are interested. But
I'd love to do that with you.
Yeah. But
and, give me this holiday to read it.
Yeah.
For myself, and then I'll come back with you like, oh my gosh. But I'm excited. I've heard some very interesting things. I'm hoping that means we're going to get more for the Alpha Legion later on.
Well,
but
yeah. There, like we say, there is this Pale Spear model coming. It might be an Omegon model, I will say, because they are, like, you know, you talked about money for Games Workshop. There is, all the Primarch models are selling so well, they're selling them again for the Horus Heresy. Yeah. So you got a second Horus model, you're going to get demon versions of all the Primarchs, you're probably going to get like a Khan on a bike, and then you'll get an Omegon. So it might just be Omegon, to be fair, for the Heresy, because he doesn't officially have a model. And then how hilarious would it be if he's just like a mirror of the Alpha Aries model? That would be funny.
Oh, please, I will be so livid.
But given that you know, Harrow Master clearly sold well enough that they might commission Mike Brooks for another one, Solomon Akora might just get a model, and that would be a great, massive deal for 40k. Yeah. Anyway, we have been streaming for over 2 hours, so I think we're going to call it there. We've kept Josh for a very long time, but thank you so much for joining me, man. This has been so much fun. I will do one last plug of Josh. If you are interested in getting better at painting, please do. I've linked his Instagram in the description, and I think you can find all your links through there. I don't know if you mainly operate from Instagram, but then if you subscribe to his Patreon, you can get access to all his tutorials to become a painter as good as this. And yeah, I'm sure that seems pretty desirable. So definitely check that out. And if people have really been enjoying this stream, I think so. If people would like us to, then we'll do a deeper dive on the Alpha Legion post Drop Site Massacre lore, and maybe a bit of an in-depth look at certain aspects of them. But yeah, let us know what you think. Josh, any final things to mention? I don't know if I missed anything.
Oh, thank you for having me, dude. It's nice to nerd out about Alpha Legion. I haven't done it in so long, to be honest. And I've been so focused on other things outside the Alpha Legion that I forget how much I kind of remember. But thank you for like filling in the gaps, and it's lovely to meet your crowd. You've got a wonderful community here, so it's super cool. Hopefully we do this again.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much to everybody. I hope you're enjoying Lormus. We are going to cover a bunch more Legion lore. I think tomorrow we're going to talk about the Raven Guard, but I would like to get through all of them at least by midway January. So we'll get there. We'll get there. But take care, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.